Well, good evening everybody. We are back online again for another aviation English themed video. And what I wanted to do today was continue with the ICAO rating table and look at the next criterion in the list, which is that of comprehension. So, as we always do, we'll start by reading what ICAO says about level 6 in comprehension. So what ICAO say is, comprehension is consistently accurate in nearly all contexts and includes comprehension of linguistic and cultural subtleties. That's a very nice word, subtleties. It sounds very nice when you say that word. So what does that actually mean in practice? Because as we've seen with the other criteria, sometimes when it's written down, you don't really understand what it's supposed to mean in practice. So for me, comprehension for a level 6 is someone who can understand pretty much anything, regardless of the way that it is phrased, be it in a more simple form of English or with a more idiomatic approach. So, for example, someone who can understand equally well a question from ATC where they say either, do you need assistance, or are you going to need any help? So, means the same thing, but phrased slightly differently. So somebody who's got a level 6 in comprehension generally should have enough linguistic and, shall we say, cultural experience to be able to understand the same question when it's phrased in various different ways, provided that it remains fairly standard. I mean, if it's somebody whose level of English is poor and they don't construct the sentence properly, that's not really a problem. But when they're dealing with standard English used both in a simple and a more complex context, then they should be able to understand that. And when it comes down to cultural subtleties, I would class cultural subtleties as being things like, for example, the difference between American and British English. So knowing that in American English we say the ramp for the parking area, and in British English we say the apron for the parking area. And all various kind of things like that, where somebody who has a very good experience of English and is able to understand everything shouldn't have any kind of problem with that. Now, comprehension is one of the criteria which demonstrates something that I often say to people. Now, at the moment, particularly with the job market being quite difficult, I'm getting a lot of people who are contacting me and asking whether it's possible to go and take English lessons to try and get a level 6. Now, the problem with this is that a lot of level 6 is really just a question of experience. You have to have been in situations where English was being used in a certain way. You have to be comfortable with people speaking at a certain speed and using certain idiomatic expressions. Now, whereas perhaps to go from a level 4 to a level 5, taking lessons may help you to improve your comprehension and improve your grammar, particularly to move from a level 4 to a level 5. Generally, somebody who's aiming for a level 6 should already have the level of experience necessary to be able to achieve a level 6 in comprehension. But that's just my opinion. I'm sure there are many providers of English training who are just screaming at me now saying, oh, no, you can definitely come and do a course and guarantee a level 6. Unfortunately, in real life, that isn't the case. Level 6 really is a question of experience, particularly when it comes to comprehension, because as I say, you have to have been exposed to all of these scenarios. Now, that's not to say that you can't improve your comprehension. One good example I wanted to give of this is when people, quite often when people talk to me about aviation English, they say, oh, well, James, particularly people in France, they say, well, James, I watch all of my films in English without any subtitles. And I say, well, that's nice, but does that really help you to understand English? Watching films in English without subtitles helps you to hear English, but does it necessarily help you to understand English? That's a very, very good question. I would say that just watching films without any kind of additional material it helps to kind of train your ear to hear English, but it doesn't actually help you to improve your comprehension, because what is comprehension in English? It's understanding things when people say them. Now, when people say things, they say sentences, and sentences are constructed with grammatical structures. So before you can understand what somebody is saying, you have to know and to be exposed to the grammatical structures and the vocabulary that they are using. So just watching films in English, for me, doesn't really have any learning value. What you should do, and I say this is just my opinion, but what you should do is do as I do when I'm practicing my Dutch. Now, some of you will know from previous videos that one of my hobbies over the last few years has been to learn to speak Dutch. Now, obviously, Dutch is not a particularly useful language in a global sense, because most Dutch people speak English pretty well. But the reason why I do it is because, as an English trainer, as a language specialist, and somebody who is interested in the business of language, it is very important for me to not to forget what it is like to be in the place of someone who is learning a language and who is struggling to assimilate new information. So what I do to work on my Dutch comprehension is I take a TV series or I take a documentary and I watch the Dutch TV series or documentary with Dutch subtitles. But it's not just to sit there and have a beer and just watch the TV. No, what I do is I watch it probably for about 5 minutes. And with the subtitles, I listen to what's going on. And if I come across a construction or a sentence that I haven't heard before, I take my pen and I write down what I've heard. Then I'll go back to the beginning of that segment and listen to it again. Then I'll go on the internet and look up that expression. Word reference is very good for this. There is a fairly well-developed Dutch section on word reference now. So I'll go onto word reference and I'll look at the construction. And then I'll Google the construction as well. Google with inverted commas to find the exact sentence. And just look at different examples of how it's been used. And then I'll make myself a little list like this, and then I'll move on to another little segment. So what am I watching at the moment? I'm watching Undercover, which I highly recommend. It's based on a true story about an undercover drug squad in Belgium trying to catch a notorious drugs dealer. And it stars Tom Vace, who some of you may well know because he was in a TV programme called Tom Testeron, which was a Belgian programme. And one of the things he did was to learn to land a 737 in a month, having had no flying experience. So really worth watching. And also Anna Driver, who is another a Dutch actress who I've seen in various other things. So improving your comprehension is not just hearing the language, it's listening to the language and trying to identify what is being said and how it is being said. And that is really, really, really important. And when people listen to English a lot and get frustrated because they don't understand, it's generally because they're just hearing the language and they're not really listening to it. Anyway, I hope you found this video useful. Thank you very much for all of your kind remarks, emails, messages on various social networks. It's always a pleasure to read them. And as I say, as always, I do make an effort to reply to as many people as possible. I do receive a lot of messages, so if I don't reply immediately, please don't feel like I'm ignoring you. It really is just a question of being swamped with messages. In any case, thank you very much for listening. I hope you all have a very nice weekend, and I'll speak to you all again very soon.